Welcome back to Insights Unlocked. Today we have a special episode recorded at the UXDX conference in New York City. Joining us is Karen Hawkins, Principal of Accessible Design at Level Access. We'll explore the critical importance of digital accessibility, common challenges, and practical solutions for creating inclusive digital experiences. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Insights Unlocked, an original podcast from UserTesting, where we bring you candid conversations and stories with the thinkers, doers, and builders behind some of the most successful digital products and experiences in the world, from concept to execution.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Karen Hawkins. I'm the Principal of Accessible Design at Level Access.
And we're at UXDX. You just had a session. What was the session about?
It was a forum, so it was an open discussion on accessibility in design systems.
And accessibility is a topic I think a lot of companies are thinking about, but they don't really know. They don't know why, or they don't know where they're at, or any of that kind of stuff. Can you just talk about sort of the issue at large? Sure.
Yeah. So I'll qualify it to digital accessibility specifically, and it's still a huge issue. That digital properties are meant to be created with accessibility in mind. The idea being that anybody should be able to execute their tasks quickly and efficiently. It doesn't matter, if doesn't matter their gender or their race or their sexual orientation, or if they have a disability or not, right? It's like one should think about all the tapestry of humanity and how we can slice and dice it and design for as many people as possible. And accessibility just folds into that. It's a real problem though, because even though we've had laws around for 20 plus years, we still see the same issues over and over and over again. And a good thing to point to is this wonderful survey that's done every year by a company called WebAIM. They do a lot of different surveys, but one is they scan the top 1 million homepages in the world. And they get a readout of all of the accessibility issues. And for the 4 or 5 years that they've been doing this, they get exactly the same 5 or 6 top issues. And the problem with it is that they're all really easy to solve, like contrast. Like if the ADA has been around for 30 years or so, then why do we still have contrast issues? So it's sad that there's still so little awareness, even though we have laws that are pushing the agenda, that we really should be designing inclusive experiences from the get-go, in addition to that. But it's heartening to see that design conferences, product conferences like this, UXDX, that they've opened up the space for us to have more conversations. And I think that this is the only way that we're going to make real impact, is if we talk about it openly and we all individually work towards achieving something of our own output. And so that's almost like a bottoms-up approach, but we also need the top-down support. Like we need executive leadership, we need the money, we need the resources, and we need our individual teams trained up, and they need to have the right tools and process as well.
For that leadership component, how do they become aware of where they stand, where their organization stands? What should be the first test to sort of get that benchmark?
Well, that's a good question. So there are some really great tools out there that you can just do a quick scan of a live digital property. It only catches maybe, they say somewhere between 30 and 40% of all the potential issues, because you need a real human to get into everything. But even if you did a quick scan, you'd be able to see where you have some issues, if there's tendencies and patterns. Then the likelihood is that you will have issues, right? If, I didn't mention it, the top million homepages, 96% of them have these same issues. So the likelihood is, you've got some stuff there that you can fix. So just start there, identify some issues, and work to fix them. It isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do, though, right? It is a matter of change management, so that incorporates people, process, and tools. But that's a good way to start, at least.
Then, leadership becomes aware of it. They make a commitment to doing this. And they go to their technology officer or product officer and say, okay, everything we're doing now has to think about accessibility. What's that first step? Where do they go from there?
Oh, that's a good question too. I would say, I'm going to refer back to people, process, and tools again, right? And so I think all of the individual teams that make up, I'm going to say, the product development lifecycle, they need to do an audit with respect to people, process, and tools. Meaning, what kind of training or education do each of the people have? What types of tools are each of these people using? And do we have accessibility checkpoints built into our individual processes? Do we have accessibility metrics? So we're talking ops and governance as well for each of the respective teams. So if everybody did an audit, say, hey, this is where we're drawing a line in the sand as to where we actually sit right now. This is current state. And you want to think about your roadmap. So what are your goals in accessibility? And so then you draw a path to meet those goals. And it needs to be real. It needs to be incremental. You're not going to be able to say, we're going to be the most accessible site in a year. I don't think that that's fair. I don't think it's fair to your teams, and I don't think it's probably realistic. So, because accessibility is a journey. Once you hop on the train, you're there, right? You continue to increment and improve upon your accessibility over time. And so make realistic goals for each individual, for each team, and then for the larger team as well. And that's not just about digital products too, right? If an organization is really going to hop on board with DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and now accessibility, well then there are cultural aspects too that we can start to think about. Like your hiring practice, for instance, your travel practices with respect to accessibility, buildings. So we can extend beyond digital properties, but if that's the catalyst, it is a great way for people to think about it. My hope is that people would truly take ownership, take accountability of the accessibility of their output. And actually, if everybody did that, if that became part of culture, man, we wouldn't have 96% of the home pages with issues, you know?
Can we just speak again? This is a global problem. It's not just, a lot of people think, it's some other country that's got this problem. I mean, we're seeing this in whatever we would call ourselves, developed countries as well as. So any comments to that or?
Yeah, so it is a global issue, absolutely. Anywhere there's a digital experience, a digital footprint, then we need to make sure that as much as possible we're making those experiences inclusive and accessible. And one of the catalysts for us for doing that are the local laws. So that the EAA is new-ish, the European Accessibility Act, I think it is, and it's coming into effect in 2025, and so it's enforcing, more strict standards with respect to accessibility in Europe, and that's lovely to see. I'm from Ontario in Canada, and so we have the AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, and that's been around for a long time, pushing for accessibility. The States has the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and there's Section 508 and all these other things. And the point I bring up the law is that it's a great catalyst for initiating the change. And it doesn't matter actually where you sit in the world. Your local laws all point to the same international technical standards, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And so what's great about that is that we have one set of technical standards to help rule the accessibility of the entire world. So everybody really should be working towards the same end goal because we all have a shared responsibility to it.
We speak about the guidelines, we speak about local laws in your respective countries. Are there any other resources that people could just turn to learn more about this topic?
Oh, sure. There's tons out there for accessibility. The W3C, which is like the governing body of the World Wide Web, let's say, they have a really great introductory practical course, like an intro to accessibility. It's completely free. You can find it on their website. I mentioned WebAIM. They're a wonderful a resource as well. What's nice about WebAIM is that you can have confidence that whatever they say has been truly vetted, and you can. The confidence there, though, I think is really important because so many organizations, and I work at one that are like Level Access, we're for profit, don't get me wrong, right? And so I like to promote organizations that are not necessarily for profit, but still have really great resources like that. So those are our two good ones right away.
Is there anything else I haven't asked about you think that someone should know about as they get started on this journey?
Yeah, I think even if you don't work on a product development lifecycle team, like you don't work in that space at all, but if you work at an organization, which is pretty broad, most of us do, that's the point. I think you still have a personal responsibility to your colleagues, your customers, and or your community, meaning you have your own digital footprint. You write emails, you create Word documents, maybe you create PowerPoint presentations, you message in Slack or Microsoft Teams, something like that. You have a digital footprint, and so you don't necessarily always know who your audience is, and you don't always know what their needs are. And so you can also take personal ownership of the accessibility of that output. Learn how to write accessible emails, learn how to create accessible PowerPoint presentations and Word documents. So just think that I need to make everything I output accessible, just in the spirit of inclusivity.
And if anyone wanted to learn more about you and your thoughts out there on this topic, what should they do?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Karen Hawkins at Level Access. I'm not Karen Hawkins, the romance novelist. But find me on LinkedIn, and I can point you to some more resources. Be happy to connect.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Want to keep the conversation going? You can find the show notes at usertesting.com/podcast. If you haven't already, don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, or Google Play so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend or leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And until next time, this is Insights Unlocked, an original podcast from UserTesting.